So 5 minutes starts now. Okay, everybody, we can't have too much fun because we're here for a reason. So you can hear me now? No one can. Okay, I'm just gonna, I don't know, I'm gonna start dancing maybe, then people will start noticing me. Okay, so thank you very much. I hope it was useful. And the reason we wanted to do this because Russia Direct events are not just about discussing serious topics, but it's also about networking. Because I hope that everyone who is in this room truly cares about international relationships and about improving what we do here today. So, and now I just want to give a word to our editor-in-chief, Katerina Zabrowska, and she will introduce all the panelists. And thank you very much again, all of you and the Renova. Thank you.
Hello. First of all, I would like to welcome our offline audience and our online audience, because this discussion is live streamed. Here today, we're going to discuss the future of Russian innovation and high tech. New efforts to modernize the Russian economy have taken on even greater significance, considering the Western sanctions and volatility on the oil market. And a renewed focus on technological innovation could be one way out to diversify Russian economy. But is it even possible? And what will help to modernize Russian economy? And to discuss this today, we have 6 highly regarded speakers. Each of them come from very different background, and they will be able to provide their unique insight into the discussion. First, Axel Tillman. He's the CEO of Russian venture company USA, an expert in the field of startups, entrepreneurship, and enterprise endorsement. Igor Balk, managing member of Global Innovation Labs. He is an internet visionary with 20 years of experience in software development and telecommunications. Kathleen Campbell, she's president and chief executive officer of CRDF Global. It's an independent nonprofit organization that promotes international scientific and technical collaboration. Previously, Kathleen held various positions within the US government dealing with science and technology. Nikolai Vasilyev, a co-founder and current president of the Russian American Science Association, staff scientist at the Department of Cardiac Surgery at Boston Children's Hospital, and an instructor in surgery at the Division of Surgery at Harvard Medical School. Taras Polishchuk, an HR technology expert and investment professional. He had business development for Global HRU, an international event company, and also is a board member for Talent Tech Labs, a New York-based incubator. Last but not least, Mikhail Kalugin, head of economic section at the Embassy of the Russian Federation to the United States. Please join me in welcoming our panelists. And before we start our conversation, I would also like to outline a few rules. So this discussion is going to be a 2-hour long. And the first hour, as I said, is live streamed. And the second hour will be off the record. So I hope we will be able to discuss this topic in more detail. Our online audience will be able to tweet questions to @Russia_direct. And the Twitter hashtag for today's discussion is RussianTech. I plan to have a conversation between us for half an hour. I'm going to ask questions to our panelists, and I kindly ask each of them to keep their comments under 3-4 minutes. And then I'm going to ask the discussion to our audience. Okay. I would also like to remind our audience that Russia Direct has recently released a report on Russian innovation and high tech, and you can actually find these reports here. We try to explore the topic of Russian innovation with a focus on Russian high tech hubs. And this report can be also downloaded from our website. You just need to go to our archive section. All right, so let's commence. And Mikhail, my first question is for you. Can you talk to us about the state of Russian innovation, Russian high-tech industry, and how has it been affected by the recent deterioration of relations with the West?
Thank you for organizing this event. Thank you, Russian Direct. Thank you, Renova Group. Wonderful place to be. 34th floor. Our internet followers cannot see that, but it's really a great room. I would like to start with saying that I will tell only good news about Russia. All the bad news about Russia, we can bring the US newspapers every day, lots of them. So, 3 points with what I would like to start first on the Russian economy as a whole, on the Russian innovative sector in particular, and maybe some two things on Russian-American innovative cooperation, but we can explore it and I can answer some questions later. So, what's going on in Russian economy? It's still the 6th largest economy in the world, and I always like to repeat it. Full of resources, full of innovative potential, and yes, this year we still have a negative growth. We expect already for the next year to be this growth to be positive, but we'll see. We've got problems, but at the same time, we have a great room for reserves, and we still enjoy macroeconomic stability. For example, we still have the lowest debt to GDP ratio among G20 countries. And I always like to mention these things to illustrate the picture of Russian economy. And the unemployment levels in Russia is still low. They're around the US levels, 5, 6, 7% official unemployment rate. So what's for innovative section in Russia? I would like maybe to say only some thoughts from the government point of view, because there are lots of speakers represented here. For example, Axel knows better what's going on with exact companies. For example, Russian venture company, which is dealing every day with innovations. So we adopted in 2011 a big strategy for Russian innovative development. It was done under then President Dmitry Medvedev, and was one of his signature projects of his whole presidency. and this program is still being fulfilled. It has two main stages. The first stage, I think, ended last year, 2014. So we're on the second stage, and what's it all about? It's about government financing of innovation sector in Russia, and it's really lots of money there, lots of government money. Uh, I can say that, of course, there are some. We're not. We're still learning and still training us, also on the government level, how to boost innovations, how to promote them. There are success stories. There are less success stories. As for success, I still think that the Skolkovo project, which is being criticized sometimes, but you should always remember that it's long term. It will take years and years to show big results, but some results are already there. For example, uh, as I know, all the American companies who invested in it are still there, so they're not withdrew with some political tensions between our country. Of course, there are some regional programs and regional projects in Russia. One of them, uh, similar to Skolkovo cluster in Tatarstan, which is called Nopolis, and many things are happening there. So, and the third, to cut it short, the third point on Russian American innovation. Uh, we used to have a good mechanism, or we thought it's a good mechanism for intergovernmental work on innovation. It was called uh, Innovation Working Group within bilateral presidential commission, but it was suspended by American side, the American government participation in it, uh, which is not a good thing. So on intergovernmental level, at this moment we don't discuss innovations. But I know that many companies and lots of companies are still making bilateral projects, and what I'm really interested in some university to university programs. Okay. So we have, I'll just mention one of them. It's called Innovation Corridor. It's actually a project between Nizhny Novgorod University of Lobachevsky and Maryland University, and Russian startuppers, they come to the US, stay here for 2-3 weeks, and try to present their startups. And I think it's for them very great opportunity to see how they can sell themselves in this high competitive American environment. So I would be happy to answer all the questions. Thank you.
Axel, since we have mentioned you, could you share your experience in that? And have you felt any significant problems with the ongoing U.S.-Russia political crisis?
So the political crisis is probably always focused on some strategic elements, and thanks God, innovation is not part of the strategic element today. So I still have the same flow of startup companies that would like to do business here in the US and would like to learn the difficult way of thinking, how to actually find the right audience, talk to the right customers, and understand what the root cause of a problem is. That Russia, for me, comes from a philosophy of R&D. It's an R&D centric country, and going to market strategy, this is what probably here in the US is the centric behavior. That's why they always say, I rather have a good team and a bad product. I can always change the product, but I can't find a good team. And so they are very often surprised that I try to instill in them that don't spend R&D dollars until we have at least talked to 20 companies, your potential customers, to understand whether they even have a need for this. And this flow is still going on. We have a lot of great technology ideas across the entire spectrum. So it's not only software technologies, it's life sciences, it's renewable technologies. And we need to look at this very encouraged. And there is an opportunity for American entrepreneurs that are looking for good technologies to combine themselves with Russian technologists and help them to make the next world-class companies.
So what are the strongest sectors of Russian economy that produce most innovations today?
It is also what I hear sometimes that it's not always liked, but it's still the software and internet field, right? So why is software such a strong sector in Russia? I had a Russian CTO in one of my companies, and he did not spend, like most programmers, day in and day out just typing on the keyboard. He spent most of his time thinking. For him, everything was a mathematical problem. And mathematics is a strong science in Russia, much more valued than it was actually valued here in the United States. Based on this, you can create great and excellent software engineers, and therefore their forte is to find algorithms, technology. And we all know one company that is algorithmic based, Kaspersky, that has made a huge splash into the security market here in the United States. We need to follow those positive examples to expand further and further. But with that said, mechanical engineering or in the field of certain life science aspects, I see very hopeful signs that Russia can hold its own on the R&D side. And again, we need to aid this movement with marketing.
Taras, my next question is for you. As Axel mentioned, the strong feature of Russia is its basically brain, strong engineers, mathematicians. Many say that after Ukraine, brain drain among these people has increased. Others argue. What is your perspective on that?
Interesting question, but I actually wanted to add a bit on Axel's point before I go into that. It's very true that Russia has an R&D philosophy versus go-to-market philosophy that you mentioned, and that's as well a problem because due to that, we don't have that loud success stories that would be publicly released and that would be very known by the global audiences. We don't have consumer products that kind of have global influence. Just because we are more about technologies that add a lot of value but are under the radar for most people, and that's like a major problem that I see. So the more like consumer products that are well known to the larger audience we create, even for the tech sector, the more innovation will prosper in Russia, and the more investments we will get from the. Yeah, totally agree with that. Anyway, brain drain. That's actually a problem more in Ukraine than Russia right now. I see a lot of engineers and a lot of tech professionals moving from Ukraine to Europe and to the US, and a lot of companies hiring in that geography. In Russia, I haven't heard that it's becoming more of a problem recently. We still have low unemployment rates. There's still a lot of work available for engineers, for tech professionals. So I wouldn't say that that's a major issue right now. At least it's not like increasingly so.
Good. It's good to hear. Igor, could you talk a little bit about Russian high-tech hubs? What do you think is their role in modernizing Russian economy? How significant they are, and can they actually have meaningful effect?
Well, traditionally from Ukraine, Russia has a lot of technology centers which were like originally due to nuclear development facilities or other related stuff. But then with help of our friends from CRDF Global, for example, they started to transform to real high-tech hubs. I know that like guys from CRDF spend a lot of effort in like 90s trying to help teach people how to do commercially viable stuff, not only like nuclear warheads, which is kind of we all have to send them for this. I mean, like, it's kind of really important both for Russia and for like the rest of the world because makes the world much safer. Nowadays, it's really how it starts from because Duma passed a law about accelerated development territories, and I believe it's really, really important for Russia. Uh, by 2017, they will be like in Far East only, and it will be like a pilot project, but then they will be like extended to full Russia. And I believe that the law about this territory special zones took the best from the Skolkovo project and learned from the mistakes which were made in Skolkovo. And I really believe that it's the way to go because it gives like a special treatment for like really big uh, territories and like a lot of people will be able to do more sophisticated stuff they can do right now because of the Russian laws. Unfortunately, like because of like Soviet legacy, Russian law is not always entertainer friendly, and it still has a lot of like legacy stuff like employment law, IP law, and these special zones are much easier to overcome this. So I think it's really really good thing which is happening right now in Russia. Well, same all this political tension and all this stuff we don't know what will happen, but like, in general it's moving in the right directions. And I hope our guys from Sergei Global will also help with that somehow.
Catherine, could you talk about your experience? And again, let me go back to the problem of Russian-US relations. Have you noticed anything? Is it affecting your work?
Well, fortunately, we work in the space, science, and innovation where there's common interest in continuing to find connections. And this is one of the beautiful things about science collaboration and work between scientists. It dates back to the Cold War. It continued and grew significantly over the last 2 decades. And it is still an area where there's tremendous interest in continuing to work. We get more applications than we have funding to support. So we continue to see that there's interest between scientists in both countries to collaborate. And fortunately, we see the same sort of mentality and interest among the entrepreneurs. I think one of the greatest strengths that Russia has, as other speakers have said, are its people and its brains. The scientists are wonderful. The entrepreneurs that we've worked with are like sponges. They're just so eager to absorb and share knowledge and learn from their colleagues in Russia and from around the world. And I think there's tremendous opportunity to continue to strengthen those kinds of partnerships.
So it's about Russia-US diplomacy, scientific diplomacy.
Well, science diplomacy, I think, is a very valuable tool, and it's something that has worked well between the U.S. and Russia over the years. And yes, I think now more than ever, we need to continue to push it.
Nikolai, and what do you think are the main obstacles for Russian innovation development today?
First of all, thank you also for the invitation and for hosting this event. Continuing on what Kevin just said, the history of science diplomacy between Russia and the US, between actually Soviet Union and the US is quite long. In 1970s, it was the first symposium on congenital heart disease surgery that was held in Bethesda, Maryland. After it was an agreement signed between the President of the United States and the Secretary General of the Communist Party. And if you imagine during that coldest year of the Cold War, Russian physicians and US physicians and scientists could get together and discuss biomedical sciences, I think we can do it very easily today in this environment. Going back to the obstacles, I think one of the main obstacles in Russian science to stay competitive is it has to be open. It has to be open to the world. It has to attract professors from foreign universities. It has to create transparent rules for the positions, for the research at the university, the research institutions. So the professor or physician who comes to Russia should see his or her position in Russian university as a stepping stone for the next step in other universities in Europe or the US. It cannot be a dead end for him or her to come and teach for, let's say, 2 or 3 years. So Russian university has to become part of the global science. And there is already a pretty good example, Skolkovo Tech, for example. There are other universities that are following the lead. For example, the universities that are part of 5 to 100 program. So they're trying to create very good environments for professors to join the faculty and for the students to join the university. The other obstacle is probably the educational programs are still classic educational programs. I think there is an opportunity to create multidisciplinary programs, for example, between biomedicine and engineering, not classic engineering and classic medicine, but something as a mix. There is a good example, only small but good, at Igor's alma mater, Physics and Technology Institute. There is a department that teaches next bioengineers, but it's a very small department. I think that this example can be scaled up significantly. There is also a lack of intellectual property specialists in Russian universities. There are tech transfer offices, but there are not too many specialists who know the law, who know the how to work from the laboratory to the product, what to say to scientists, how to approach the company. And I think there is an opportunity there. And finally, the funding. The Russian government is doing a lot lately and funding a lot of projects. There are new funds, government-run funds created. But I think it's not enough. I think that private funds should also contribute to funding the scientific projects. Private funds, private philanthropists in Russia and also from abroad. There should be more domestic Russian projects and also probably transatlantic projects. It's always difficult to run transatlantic government-backed project because it's taxpayers' money, obviously. But for private funds, it's much easier. And there are examples between, for example, some European countries and the US, the Duke Foundation and other foundations. So I think there are some obstacles, but there are a lot of good opportunities as well.
Thank you. I would like to know other panelists' point of view on the role of the government in innovative economy. What should the role be? Should it be stronger, less strong?
So very often I have heard there shouldn't be a role for government, and that's not just for Russia, but in other countries as well. But we have to understand that when we look even in the history where everybody looks Silicon Valley and United States, the role of the government exists even today. InQtel is a huge investor in a specific strategic startup community and technologies. And we have every single state has technology funds. State of Massachusetts has a venture capital firm. So we see that the government has a role. And if the role is understood that capital needs to be provided, but there shouldn't be an influence and oversight other than preventing criminal activity, but let the forces do what they do best. Have fund managers that know what they are doing and not dictate by the government where should be invested, what should be done, then the market will sort it out and will create more successes in the market.
What do you see in Russia?
I think there is still, like in other European countries, I see still a very strong desire that you need to be in this sector, and it should be a little bit more hands-off, in my point of view.
And it's very true what Axel just said, that all governments across the world, they are actually involved in innovation economy. Like in Europe, you would have like a state fund that would provide funded funds, that is where the capital is provided by the government to other private investors. And as well, every university, like almost in the US, would have a parallel ventures or any other university or state would have its own venture fund. And as well in Israel, the role of government is very high in the innovation economy. So it's a common practice. But again, there's like a big distinction between what companies like RVC, for example, are doing and what companies, well, if you take Russia, free, this fundraising incentive they are providing capital directly. They are seeding startups, and RVC is like a fund of funds that is providing capital to private investors. That's very different, and that's more.
I totally agree with what both speakers have said, and I would add that the government has another role, and that is to enable the environment, a productive environment for innovation. And that's the protection of intellectual property rights, encouraging, it can get down to things like visas and enabling people to go back and forth, the capital flow, all of those things really have an impact on an innovation economy.
Yeah, it's also legal system,
Absolutely.
courts and stuff. And actually, I probably will kind of say extension of this panel, but in my opinion, the Russian government is not doing enough to promote innovation. Because like there was the Russian president like a few years ago to increase government spending on R&D almost twice, and it's still not there. It's just 1% of Russian GDP and R&D, and which is not sufficient at all. I believe that it's very important for government to create environment for R&D, for science, for education, and private sector, especially in Russia, couldn't pick up for this yet. And it's not doing enough in that field, in my opinion.
I think for science and education, government role should be limited to establish the certification process, to establish the rules for graduation, etc. But then government should step back a little bit and allow universities to choose the scientific areas, to allow professors to choose the scientific areas where they want to perform the research. And this is a little bit different in Russia, for example. There is also always some directions from the central government. What are the priorities for the research? And sometimes these priorities are a little bit late than on the global scale. So there are good examples, for example, nanotechnologies and neuroscience. The Russian government is slightly late than on the global scale. I would allow universities and professors to decide what they are interested toward, and the scientific market will decide if this is actually interesting project or not. Because when you submit the publication to the journal, your peers, your colleagues will say, "Oh, this is very interesting. This is extremely productive group, and this is very worthwhile results," or not.
Yeah, I would like to this that there's like one stage tendency in Russia at the time to make entrepreneurs out of scientists, which is not exactly the same. It's different beat. And you couldn't make like scientists to do companies.
You are a scientist.
I agree, but at the same time, not all, but many great innovations come from the laboratories. And I mean, we don't want for scientists to run the company, but the basis for the company, the basis for the product comes from the lab. How to translate it, to the product, how to translate it to the company, that's a different story.
Well, I would agree in this because there's like three different species. Scientists who produce knowledge, engineer who use this knowledge to practice, and entrepreneur who use this practice to market. So it's not necessarily one person, it could be like two different persons.
I completely agree, and they have to work in unison,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Actually, in my opinion, universities need to be given the freedom to do random research because you don't know what comes out of there. Companies, startup companies, have to look profitability in the eye from day one. So there will be R&D projects in universities that can be commercialized, some of them maybe in 30 years. That is a risk we have to take with the capital that we invest into university, because some of the foundation research might be light years ahead of its commercialization task. And I mean, look at the internet and many things we have today. They came out of the 50s and 60s research, right? I remember 1983, I went to Comdex and I already heard voice recognition, right? On a little IBM PC. Voice recognition today still doesn't work correctly, right? So look at that time spent, but this is being possibly made by the scientists in universities.
So, example of which country do you think would be the most applicable for Russia?
I actually believe, I grew up in Germany and I consider myself a blind person when I grew up over there and I saw the light coming over here. For me, I would model anything that works after the US model and maybe just analyze where some pitfalls are, trying to avoid this if I replicate a complete new innovation society. But what works here so well is that you mentioned legal system and so on, but we have also a society that embraces failure. Yeah, I don't see this in Germany, in Russia. Failure is basically the end of your career, and this is such a fundamental change that we have to have. And if I have one advice for politicians, you cannot create by the stroke of a pen or by outpour of dollars change of culture and society in 10 or 15 years. And if you don't see results in 10 years, you pull the plug on the money and then you want to stop everything because you haven't seen the fruits of your labor. This is a 20, 30-year process you have to be willing to engage in. Then Russia will be a very innovative country and will have reduced its dependency of oil and gas and will make a lot of revenue on innovative technologies.
But how do you actually do that? Well, you mentioned that you need to continue to invest over years and years, but how do you change culture so that failure is embraced as not necessarily something negative? But
part of the culture comes from the fact, and I don't know all the laws in Russia, but Russia, I always joke, went over to Germany at one point in time, copied everything, including its bureaucracy, and perfected it. And so therefore, let me speak from my German perspective, which I believe is probably true also for Russia. In Germany, there is a law on the books that if you used up your paid-in capital, you basically have to cease operation. When you see in the US, there is a funding going on, and you have the hope of funding, you continue to push the ball. You may already be 3 paychecks behind, and you continue pushing. In Germany, you're already in jail if you do this. So how can you encourage taking a larger leap of faith for something, prematurely push the accelerator to make a successful company if your legal system doesn't back you up? Yeah, if the legal system says this is what you can't do, then everybody's afraid of doing it. If your legal system says you cannot give stock options of untraded companies, then you have taken one vehicle away where everybody in the company is encouraged to actually want to work for this company because everybody dreams in that $1 billion outcome and you have 0.3% of the shares. If you can't do this, then what is in for the people?
Do you like to reply? And does the Russian government study experience of other countries and which countries in particular?
Oh, of course, certainly we study all the best practices around the world. There is no one size fits all thing. I think we have to find something very Russian to be successful in Russia. But of course, there are lots of practices in Germany, the US, and some Asian countries to be copied or adjusted to Russian realities. But of course, there is a room for government in the Russian innovative sector. History tells us that government plays a big role in Russia, and in many spheres, also in this area. So I think the thing for us for today is to find this right balance of the government involvement, which has already been done for the last 5 years, starting with Skolkovo, starting with Renova, and refunding old technoparks, science towns in Russia.
Should we even be thinking about that, considering the recession in the Russian economy? Shouldn't we be thinking about spending money on some other?
We are spending them and even increasing spending, because if you look at the anti-crisis plan of the government for the R&D for the innovation sphere, there are, I think, around 5 billion rubles allocated to these spheres to boost this. So we think that we need to spend some more money for that sphere. Of course, maybe it's not up to the level really needed. And you mentioned this, that we're spending around 1% of our GDP. But I would support Axel's idea that we need more private funding, private business funding. That would be the right
We get it. So definitely
Invest in Russia. That's the answer.
There was actually a question from Twitter that I think fits really well right now into the discussion. There's a bunch of questions, but everything about the government. Because on the one hand, we're speaking about attracting new talents, but on the other hand, let me just read this, excuse me. How can we speak about attracting new talented people in Russia if a lot of talented professors are leaving the country, such as Guriev, Sonin, Durov, the closure of Dynasty Foundation? Doesn't it seem to you that the government has played a role in sparkling this trend? And the questions are specifically to Mikhail, to you, and Nikolai, to you.
Attracting innovations and attracting and preventing brain drain is a bumpy road. There are ups and downs, so I would not comment on some specific issues mentioned, but in general, what government does right now, that we try to attract and to attract foreigners and to keep Russian professionals in Russia, and that's why Skolkovo was launched as completely, it's a grassroots, completely from scratch. And I would repeat only one thing: we need more time. Nothing happens at once.
I would say on the specific examples on these two professors who moved, I'm not sure what to mention because these are individual stories. Konstantin and believe they were attracted to foreign universities that accepted the position. I think I already mentioned that in order for Russian science to succeed, it has to be open. It has to enable mobility in both ways. Not only to allow people to leave the country and to accept the positions of foreign universities, but also to attract professors to work in Russia. I can tell you, for example, the previous president of the Russian American Science Association, he accepted permanent position in Skopje, Artem Oganov. So it's a two-way road. Unfortunately, recently, the second example that you mentioned, the issue with the Fond dynasty, I think this is quite alarming example, and I mentioned that if a Russian government is the only supporter, is the only fund source for the Russian science, I think it's really alarming practice. No government in any country, even the richest government, can fully support science and innovation. We have to make sure that private philanthropies, private funds are allowed to support science, and they actually should be incentivized to do that. So I think this is quite alarming issue, and I hope it's a good result.
Speaking of questions from our readers, we actually have a few questions submitted beforehand, before the discussion, and one of them I think is for Axel and Kathleen, for you. Why do Russian startups often use accelerators in Singapore as a platform for global markets? Is the US losing its position as the high IT hub for Russian startups?
So I have a direct experience. We had 3 years running sponsored Maersk Challenge, which is a startup accelerator. We had in the last year of our sponsorship I think 40 or 50 Russian companies submitting their applications. We had 4 companies be accepted for the accelerator. We had 1 winner out of there, which didn't end up with the cash prize. Following the blogs I read in Russia about the participation, I think there's a discrepancy between their expectation level, because I think we have such a great product. Don't you see how beautiful the product is? And then the judgment that they didn't make it all the way to the top. I have seen all the excellent products, but I have seen also among most American companies that come there that they end up with the same disappointment, that they didn't understand how important the commercialization efforts are. So I think the Russian kids no longer want to participate in the accelerators because they feel misjudged, which is not misjudged. They are actually didn't get the tools over there yet to present themselves in the right way for the audience and the judges to be heard. So therefore, I feel they're going to Singapore, although I personally was never there, and they think they get a better audience, that Singapore accepts more their scientific accomplishment than the business value proposition.
One of the things that we're doing through one of our programs is to provide online training for entrepreneurs or scientists in Russia that are interested in trying to commercialize their technology or develop a company. And that's hopefully going to help address some of this issue that Axel talked about the education and training and building the skill sets, so that there's more understanding and clearer expectations about what is needed. On the issue of Singapore, I really can't comment specifically, but would note that we live in a globalized economy. Innovation takes place all over the world. There are markets all over the world, and I think that people should go where there is a market for the company or the technology that they're developing.
I'd like to add, if possible, because we do have presence in Singapore, and we actually one of the people who help Russian startup, for example, to go there. There are a few things. First, we have to understand that it's global market, and you can be like in Singapore and sell your product in the US, or you can be in Russia and sell your product in the US. It's really doesn't matter where you are. Second, Singapore is really close to Russia in terms of problems that have to face. It has to create a ecosystem of innovation, which does it traditionally, because traditional Chinese family expect the kids to go to work for big corporation. And if you're starting your own company, you're already failed in some ways. And Singaporean government doing a lot of direct access. They spend a lot of money, and they have like 50 years to achieve this. It's not like we need results like tomorrow or day after tomorrow. It's in 50 years. And they're spending a lot of money on startups and creating ecosystem. And it's much more easy to get grants funding in Singapore than even here in the US. Because here you're competing against like 10,000 different people from all around the world for this money, for every dollar you get. It's much easier in Singapore because it's much less competitive. And a lot of money, yes, not now. So that's why it's kind of attractive for like young startup was not good enough for the US market. No, seriously. That's what people in Singapore realize, and that's what they say. If you are perfect, go to the US, go to Silicon Valley. If you're like, okay, you probably should stay where you are. But if you are good, but not good enough for Silicon Valley, come to us. We will help you.
Do the companies have to relocate to Singapore then in exchange?
Okay, you have to open a Singaporean company which has to be 30% owned by a Singaporean person in order to get like support from Singaporean government, but it's not that hard. You can get like to one of these Singaporean accelerators, and it's absolutely so.
And they are very open, so we as well work with Singapore with Infocom, which is like local analog of Avacat, basically. I would say, so they are very open. They provide, business partnerships. They help a lot locally, so it's very open. But I would say that this question is not based on statistics. I mean, I wouldn't say that like more companies go to Singapore. Or
no, it's not
US,
but
I
would say I personally know like 3 or 4 accelerators in Singapore who fund with Russian money. So it's a lot of Russian money, private money in Singapore accelerators, because it's much easier to get like government support, whether it's like 1 to 8 or 1 to 10 matching from government for like every dollar from the private fund.
So as I said, when we were working with this,
And Mikhail probably should take note of like, because Skolkovo is competing in a global market, and it's not even remotely like as attractive as like many foreign programs similar to Skolkovo. Unfortunately.
And we have another question from Twitter.
Yes. Cautious if Russia's civil tech and defense tech companies are one and the same. No one in particular, just a question to all the panelists. Civil tech and defense tech companies in Russia are one and the same or not?
One the same.
One and the same. Civil technologies, defense technologies.
Any guesses?
no.
I mean, if they are if it's the same company that is engaged in civil technology as well as in defense technology, then they could potentially be also victimized by the current political relationship. I had a company invitation last year for the World Summit of Innovation and Entrepreneurship here in New York, and I came across this company. They built one of the most beautiful public transportation trams. And then about a month before the summit, the company went on the blacklist. Therefore, the people didn't want to travel or couldn't travel over here anymore. This is the unfortunate short-sightedness that political effects can have. I saw that was one of the most beautiful trends that can compete against Stadler, which is one of the leaders from Switzerland.
And to add to that point as well. So actually, like the way this panel was composed and the topic that was proposed, just like the effect of sanctions and on the current economic situation on the innovation economy, it's a bit weird because the sanctions they have limited effect on certain things. Like they would limit certain people to enter certain countries, they would limit food to a certain extent, and some contracts were revoked. But it has no effect on like the actual, innovation, on tech companies that are building global operations in Russia. So I wouldn't say that the real sector or the civil sector, as the Twitter question proposed, is really influenced by those sanctions, unless they are somehow connected to strategic projects that are so much.
Do you agree about the limited effect of sanctions? Okay, if there are no questions on Twitter.
There is actually a follow-up on the question, I think after listening to what Axel said. This is the heritage of the Soviet system military defense tech, of the Soviet system military defense tech first, only then civic technology. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm confused.
Which is actually Department of Defense funded agency, which, as I didn't know better, produced lots of innovations. So of course, some of the innovations are born in Russia within defense companies, but some are not. So there are so many companies in Russia in both spheres, so we can't say 100% connected, or even 50%.
Mikhail, actually, so finally I understand what the person means. Why do we still have one of the best military fighter jets in the world, but no good cars, microwaves, or washing machines?
So it's a labor division globally. So some make good cars, some make good fighter jets.
Yeah. But I think, Katya, I may follow up on that, because this is actually very close to my question that I had, and I think that Taras mentioned before that when we speak about innovation, and Kathleen also mentioned that we have lots of innovation when it comes to space exploration or collaboration between scientists from both countries. But when we speak about everyday things, because everyone knows what South Korean innovations are, because we have them in our pocket, or what American innovations are, because we use these services every day. But when we speak about Russian innovations, there was a very upsetting personally to me article in Bloomberg when they said that the only consumer innovation Russia had in the last 10 or 15 years was Yotta phone, which is really cool, but do you have it? And that was it. I mean, so why is this happening? Why are we so great with defense and space exploration, but there is nothing in my pocket from Russia?
I actually had the same point, but
Yeah.
on the other hand, there's Kaspersky that was mentioned. There's Abby that is building basically language translation software and some other semantic stuff. There's a bunch of other companies like EPAM, Locksoft, and a few others that is building global tech businesses, and they are sort of not under their radar, but they are like, we are using their products and using their services in everyday life. So it's not necessarily true that we don't have anything that is.
Well, actually, if people play games on iPhone, cut zero,
Yeah.
all of this nice stuff. And actually, if you go to like any Apple store right now, and you will see like at least one of application pre-installed on all iPhones in Apple Store, which comes from actually our alumni from our programs. So
Which one is that? Which?
it's table guide, so you can just take a look at it. I don't remember the exact name, but if somebody related to it, they can send me like tweet or whatever, and I will follow up with the exact name.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And on that note, I would like to open the discussion to our audience. We are welcoming questions from you, and I think we have about 5-10 minutes on the record, and then we will have to turn the camera off and thank our online audience. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, please. Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Polina Kutaeva. I'm representing the US-Russia Chamber of Commerce, but I think I will speak from, like, I used to be a headhunter for 10 years, mostly in the oil and gas business, but moved to IT sphere over the last 2 years. And we touched this topic a little bit here. It's again about why Russia has, we are very much into research and development philosophy, which I agree, and we lack of this commercialization. We don't know how to market things, and I speak with a lot of investors, and what they do is they basically go to Russia, they find these great technologies that no one knows about, and then they bring it to the world. And or we have this brain drain, so people are coming here to become successful. So my question is, do you see any progress on this commercialization thing? Do we learn how to market? Are there any changes, and how do you see the development of this sector within 10 years?
If I might, when you go to New York City, you usually use public transportation, right? It's kind of expected. And when you use public transportation, you will probably want to use some application to see where the train is, where the bus is. So this technology was developed also by our alumni in actually niche development. And the lessons are integrated here. So you can see that people, even from like most people who got more remote places, kind of doing much better nowadays than it used to be. And it's, I believe it's due to like a lot of educational programs which run by us or has from CRDF, which help people from different regions actually learn how to do stuff, how to make products which is in the market which is needed by people. And I see that this like certain effort in maybe like 5 or 10 years it will be way better than it is right now, because we see that now it's much better than it was 10 years ago. So just give a little bit of time.
Be patient.
And give a bit of success stories.
Yes.
So what,
Yes.
Yeah.
Russia needs success stories. Right. Take a look at Estonia. So their whole innovation ecosystem was based on the fact that Skype was one of the like global successes in the IT space. It was sold for billions of dollars, and now like early engineers from Skype and people reinvest into the innovation industry. So we need more success stories that are as well PR'd, well represented to the global market, and actually companies that are going to pockets of people in the US. And US people know about those innovations. So as soon as we have those companies and we can tell the world about them, that will gradually improve. So I would say,
Absolutely, and that's internally in Russia, having those success stories, having people that can then share that experience and mentor younger entrepreneurs, I think will have a tremendous impact.
I'm also very optimistic. We've seen students 5 years ago and now students, postgraduate postdocs, who used to focus only on science. Now more and more students, because they know scope cover, they know success stories, they are interested in translation. They don't not only interested in research, publish a paper, but they want to create a product in Russia and more global market. I've seen this in computer science, in medical devices, and I think it's getting there.
Yep.
Yes, my name is Bill Courtney. I'm with the RAND Corporation in Washington. Is the issue that you raised, is the issue primarily improving overall business conditions in Russia, or is the issue something specialized to technology? For example, the World Bank publishes an index called Ease of Doing Business. I'm not sure where Russia ranks on that index. A lot
It's been doing good actually.
Pardon?
It's been doing good on this one.
Okay, good.
We're now 62nd.
Okay, terrific. Well, a number of
Under
countries
20 2 years ago.
a number of countries focus on trying to do better in that index in order to attract investors. So is it overall business conditions, or is there something special to technology that holds back the commercialization of Russian technology?
I think there is a unique aspect of the way research and development or science and technology developed in Russia that makes it challenging. And that is that for the most part, it was separate from the market. And so there isn't the kind of sophisticated ongoing feedback loop between the market and the R&D. And I think addressing your issue or your question about the consumer market, I think that's what it's going to take, is just more and more scientists and entrepreneurs really focusing on listening to the market and pursuing ideas that are in response to market need, not what they want to do.
You could probably answer the question. Here in the US, probably we have about, if you do products for the B2B market, we have a target audience that is 98% private companies. I think we have still a strong emphasis on government-owned big businesses. So it is a totally different business philosophy to do business with a government-owned company versus a private company. What's the statistics? How many of the Russian businesses are still considered quasi-government?
I don't know the exact figure of that. Yes, government and state-owned enterprises play a big role in Russia and will play in the future, certainly. But when we speak about innovation and startups and innovation, I think, personally, we speak about more small and medium-sized businesses, which are mostly private or funded by the government.
Right, but for investors to see attractiveness of these startups, they're supposed to have like a big market. And then,
Of course, but market is there, so
it's
not ideal maybe, but it's there.
Like somewhere to sell your company, not just your product. And it's like most of the market owned by state, there's no real competition, there's no real market condition. So there's no incentive for these big state-owned companies to buy startups. And this is kind of a big problem.
Did you want to turn it off? Okay.
Is there another question?
No questions.
I actually have one more question. So we were all talking about funding and why there isn't, why we don't see very much private funding in Russia of startups, and just considering the poor state of intellectual property protection in Russia right now. I mean, there's been some advances in 2014. There was a bit of a revamping of intellectual property law, but just why would venture capitalists feel comfortable risking their investment on companies in Russia when there really is so little in intellectual property protection, and what is Russia doing to kind of improve that?
So I don't think this is a valid argument, because there have been billions of dollars going into the Chinese market, US venture capital, and quite frankly, the intellectual property protection in Russia compared to the Chinese intellectual property protection is basically like night and day, night being China and day being Russia. It's not the same thing as in the United States, but you're doing so much better. And despite of this, lots of capital went into the Chinese market, but it went cleverly in there. It actually went into companies that were founded here in the US, or in some cases in an offshore entity. And from there, the money went into the R&D facilities and the companies of China. The companies, when they went public, were the US founded companies, not the Chinese companies, but they made money and wealth for Chinese citizens in the long run. This is a smart way of doing it and accomplishing it. And so therefore, people, US venture capital, it's not a Russian problem. Don't go to Germany, don't go to the UK, don't go to Spain or Italy, and don't go to Russia. They want to know one thing, Delaware law, and invest into a Delaware holding company. And that needs to be understood also from the Russian side, that this is their way how they will make the biggest success and attract the biggest investment. It will not be directly in Russia, but through the second way.
Yeah, I'd like to make a point on the IPR. So I'm gonna disagree with the point that the level of IPR protection is bad law. It's, I think, one of the myths reproduced by press many times, that things are really improving in Russia in recent years. IP protection and law enforcement in this year. And when we joined the WTO, we had lots of obligations also in this IP our sphere, and we fulfilled all of them to become a member. So it's not all things are closed right now. There is room, there is way to go with IP, but I can't say that we have a really bad or worst. These type of words used to describe the situation like in Russia.
Thank you. Now I would like to thank our online audience for participating and for asking questions. And we're going on the record, but before that, I would like also to remind our viewers that they can download Russian Direct report on Russian innovation and high tech from our website, russiandirect.org. Just go to the archive section. Thank you very much for your participation. And we are going to continue